Myron Swiston here, and we're renewing our YouTube videos, and that's a good thing. We want to pick up on abstract art. I want to pick up from my last video, which I left The Thinking Eye and the Nature of Nature. And of course, those two books are from an artist, Swiss artist, Paul Klee. And those two books are really The Thinking Eye, the Nature of Nature, and kind of a Baja School derivative perhaps, but more of Paul Klee himself. He's very unique, 20th century artist that defines poetic conduct, behavior in his life. Of course, he played the violin, of course. Just a little backdrop, I want to come back to the 20th century. First of all, the 20th century is the bloodiest century of all in human history. More people have died, more destruction, more maiming, more physical destruction of the earth than any century previous to this. We have some concerns. 1945 to 1998, 2,053 nuclear explosions in the world, and for which there is no filters of any kind. There are filters for dirty water. There are filters for dirty air. There are filters for dirty streams. The things that we don't see, like the explosions and the radioactive effects of those explosions, the extraction of life and diseases and continuing things that we cannot see. If we have an orange, say this size, of nuclear radiation, if we come back in 25,000 years, it'll be this big. And another 25,000, of course, it'll be a walnut, say, in size. And we have in the Earth at least a dozen dead zones that people cannot travel for 225,000 years. So there's some significant angst in the world. You can't blame people at all for their behavior and conduct when the behavior and conduct of some forms perhaps of control have been degrading the planet in some way. So there's some concerns for this 20th century angst through the screen. Edvard Munch. One of the things about Paul Klee, he did a painting called The Twittering Machine. Looks like birds, 1922, looks like birds talking to each other and having their own dialogue. So Paul Klee epitomizes some sign, symbol, and signal, of course, that epitomizes language, vocabulary, mood, happiness, love. He uses symbols like the moon, cat's eyes, and trees that float upside down in his paintings. Person who doesn't have a lot of bravura and all of the things associated with bravura. So he is really a unique artist, European artist. Continuing with the 20th century, of course, the First World War, the Great Depression, 1929, 1939, the Second World War, 1940-45. Of course, we have a Korean War in the 50s, and of course the Vietnam War in the 60s. And so this has kind of really unsettled the entire world. And so we have to find this way through consciousness of these artists who are trying to unculturate themselves, and find a way through and show the way through this in terms of reality. Of course, one of the things is culture wants stability. So culture fears its collapse, which would have loss of ideation, and so that might change. That the artists are trying to do this, to change the ideation, change a way of thinking, to change it to love rather than violence. Violence is an easy thing. Love is much more difficult to do. One you lash out and hurt and maim, and the other you extend your hand and your heart to people in your relationships, immediate, intimate environment, indeterminate environment, and to society, of course, at large. In Europe, we have German and European Expressionism. Many artists there. We have, of course, Franz, Marc, the blue horses. Of course, you can see that all of this trend in the 20th century is to change and grow our perception with the blue horses. Kandinsky with his Blue Rider. Kandinsky, again, I spoke about Kandinsky, but the movement, plane, movement across a plane, indeterminacy, line, that's a plane, but if we turn it on its side, this becomes a line. Again, this way it's a plane, this way it becomes a line. So Kandinsky and, of course, the Cubists, all of this visual foment gave us a garden of visual tools to move forward. Of course, we have Kirchner, Ernst Kirchner, Chaim, Soutine, painting sides of beef in red and the violence of the 20th century, the First World War, Second World War. And of course, Max Beckman with his kind of militaristic, totalitarian life, darks and lights and elongated forms and faces, distortion, to create this, show this angst, uncertainty of the modern time, trying to, of course, this centered a lot around Paris and Berlin, pushing all of this thing in the early part of the 20th century after the First World War into New York with the abstract painters to give them such material that they could really go forward. Of course, an artist, Piet Mondrian, a Dutch artist, of course, coming to New York with his ideas, the boogie-woogie, the jazz that he loved, to seek some safety from the Second World War. You have Muro visiting, Henry Matisse visiting, of course, New York. And all of these things were pushing, because of the foment and the destruction in the physical destruction of the 20th century in Europe, was pushing itself away over to New York, so New York could pick up these threads and continue on because of the relative safety of the time. Of course, in New York, they were suffering the Great Depression, 29-39, the market crash, the supporting of artists and the meager means, not unlike what was going on in the rest of the world with the rest of the population, a very tough time. So the 20th century has had a very tough time for humanity, and for humanity to show its way to the 21st century. And in the 21st century, we have another bloody part of this storm of lashing out again. So these artists, Paul Klee, of course, his transformation of nature, one thing becoming another. A moon becomes a tree becomes a cat's eye, kind of like a figure is a flower. So the transformational, to suggest that one thing shares its life with another and connects to another and can become another self, is part of the 20th century ideologies of all these artists. So we have this cry, the angst from 1893 that still continues today. Trust is one, trust in yourself, trust in your neighbor, trust in the society, to give some direction from all of these artists. They're trying to do it, their hearts are bleeding, they're crying out to give, to show a way that's different than our normal representational visual reality. It is really a difficult time for these artists, loss of ideation, loss of the culture, to be unculturated. Of course, there are some really interesting things. George Baselitz, German painter, painting the tree upside down. And it's not unlike this, is that where I'm sitting, if I look through the earth, I see the bottom of the people's feet in China. And likewise, they might see the bottom of my feet here. And so we can look through matter, and then we can see matter being an obstacle. It isn't really an obstacle. With vision, we can see through difficulties. With vision, we can make some bridges. And so an artist like Paul Klee was talking about signs and symbol and signal, and the cry is really a symbol which doesn't contain the truth itself, but conveys the truth of some bubbling up uncertainty from humanity. And so we've got to continue with this, trying to seek a new way of seeing and believing. With these American abstract painters, of course, there were some really bright things. Robert Motherwell evolved his gestural abstraction into other language forms and making marks, not unlike Lascaux, Altamira, to make these connections back to the time past. That makes it time present. So the lineage is there, it's underneath the surface of the skin. Our humanity is there. We're trying to struggle to keep these underlying human values, to keep coming back to the return of some kind of values other than lashing out, which is the easiest thing to do. So all of these artists, compiling them all together, just to make a survey, which what I've been trying to do, but not delve into too many of the specifics. So we have in these painters in the United States, of course, Barnett Newman, who obviously was looking at abstraction, geometrical abstraction, from Mondrian, Piet Mondrian, in his final series, his rectangulated series of architecture, the squares, the elongated squares, the colored squares, the boogie-woogie, from his flowering trees, of course, his early work and the windmill became icons in our understanding that there's something above us that we pay homage to, which is in that windmill from Mondrian. And he continued this purist idea with line and color, trying to reduce to some essential inherent clarity in some of these values. So all of these artists put together, forming a body of work. Of course, it is found in literature and other in writing and poetry, uh, in societal thinking and values, philosophy, ideologies. Of course, to grow beyond just this one little self. So I think that's it. I'm going to come back to the New York school now that the European influence has come and shined and placed itself in New York. Of course, it's come back out into the world, of course, from New York, but New York in the abstract expression has held a considerable influence and can continue today. Has an influence in Canada with the Regina Five, the Prairie Painters in Quebec, the Automatiste group in Ontario, the Painters 11, and from the group of 7 to abstraction in Canada, and it's become a worldwide phenomenon, abstraction, to change people's way of looking. Our syncopation is different. The marching band is different. The syncopation, the way it works like a locomotive, going through space and time, of course. So all of these things combine to give us a saying that Walt Whitman had. He said that I am afoot with my vision. And this, he says, if I look at the cows in the field, they shame the silliness out of me. So he realized that there was something deeper and more profound in the cows than in himself, which was really the humility, the spirit imbued in Paul Klee's work is there. It's potent. It provides a very simple, non-abrasive ways to understand some of this sign, the symbol, signal that's going on inside here, the interiority that's here that continues in the immediate environment and then in the terminate environment. And yes, we can make our influence and through the affairs, our votes count, yes, but our attitude counts. The way that we reach out, and so these abstract painters continue to do it. They continue to work in a way to come back to Baselitz, German artist, his very rough sculptures of figure, trying to pare away this covering, the chameleon covering of red, and changes whatever it finds its green. If it's on a red flower, it turns red. If it turns on a yellow flower, and so on, it keeps changing. But Baselitz, George Baselitz, of course, and all these are contributing to the way that we see the world that we live in today. Thank you again so much. I am going to believe this, get this gessoing and stretching done, and so long for now. We'll see you soon, and thank you again. Bye for now.